Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Asad Lalji, and welcome to Avid Learning's first session in 2022 and our very best to you for the year to come. To begin, I wish to make a little confession. I picked up a bit of a digital habit during the first lockdown that I still haven't managed to shake off. Anyone else here guilty of Instagram scrolling? Even as I'm fascinated by this whole new world of easy access on my thumb, each time I come across an Indian travel story, I feel a bit cheated. I feel cheated on behalf of India and cities like Mysore, that they aren't on the top 8 or 10 of the most written about cities in India. When will travel influencers and magazines open up their feeds to other cities, equally rich, sometimes richer, in historical legacy, cultural impact, beautiful landscapes, and entrepreneurial urban youth who are doing some amazing work? And there lies the seed to our new series we began in 2021 in collaboration with Live History India. Cultural Capitals, the Future Legacies of India's Cities. Today, I'm delighted to welcome you to the 8th edition of the series on the city of Mysore. Few cities enjoy such a vibrant juxtaposition of historical import with modern transformation as seamless as Mysore does, and hence we added it to our travel journey of discovery. And to help convince you further, we have a great panel of loyal Mysorians today, and I'm delighted to welcome Creative and Managing Director at Naviluna Artisan Chocolates, David Belo, Architect and Urban Designer, Dr. Champa HS, Visual Artist, Amjum Rizve, and they will be in conversation with co-founder and head of research at Live History India, Akshay Chavan. Together they will lead us through the legendary city of Mysore, so you will experience it as never before. CEO and founder of Gully Tours, Vinay P, had a last minute family emergency and he will not be with us here today. However, for those who are joining us for the first time, a very special welcome. Please refer to the chat box for more information on Avid Learning, our partners, and our speakers for this evening's discussion. Today's session will be followed by a 15-minute Q&A in which Akshay will be taking questions sent by you. So do keep posting them in the Q&A box throughout the session. Over to you, Akshay, and look forward to an exciting session. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today on a Thursday evening to discover what is perhaps one of the loveliest cities in India, Mysore. Till 1947, few people realized that Mysore was considered one of the most well-planned and beautiful cities in Asia. Under the patronage of its visionary Maharajas, Mysore emerged as a center of music, art, culture, handicrafts, cuisine, and made a mark not only in India, but even in Europe and North America. After 1947, the regime changed and a new set of rulers came. But the essence of what is Mysore still lives today. And that is what we discover in our discussion today. So I shall start by asking my first panelist, Dr. Champa, what does Mysore mean to you as a city?
Good evening, and thanks to Evit for inviting us for this panel discussion. I mean, it would be lovely and a little bit of emotional to talk about our own city. Okay, I think we are born with silver spoon. I meant it's not we as family. I think in general, Mysoreans. The urban setting, what has been provided to us from the beginning, which is like very new to India. Okay. And it's not post independence, it's pre independence. So it is for generations together, we have enjoyed this particular, what can we, there's the setup. Okay. I think each one of us, it's not only the city, the physical setting. I'm also talking about the literature, the music, the education, let it be anything. I think this is what we have really enjoyed and then grown up as a person, as individual, As Mysoreans, I think this has been a great, great experience. I wouldn't want to live in any other town other than Mysore. We are always back to our roots. This is what I feel.
So from Dr. Champa, who is an old Mysorian, I go to David. And David, I would like to ask you that from South Africa to India, perhaps you have taken the route which traders have taken for 2000 years. Maybe you flew down, but what brought you to Mysore?
Uh, Quite simply, a change of pace. I was in London for 11 years, having left South Africa, and was looking for something that, as a creative person, would give me the breathing room to really incubate projects properly. And I think, having discovered Mysore, I really was charmed and inspired by the city infrastructure and the wide boulevards and the old architecture. But as a creative person, the city also gave one a lot of space to really explore ideas and ferment them properly. So that's definitely been a big part of the appeal to me, and I think that there's probably a reason why it's inspired, many generations of both artists as well as artisans.
So if I have to ask you, David, what does Mysore mean to you as a place, mean to you as a city?
For me, Mysore is still very much a city of craft. It is a place where industrialization was incubated in what would later become modern India, but it is still sits at the pinnacle between pre and post industrialization, and I think that it reminds me a lot of cities like Morocco, like Jaipur, where craftsmanship is still very much alive and abundant, and there seems to me for me to be a balance between harnessing the best of the old world whilst being able to move quite firmly into the new.
Interesting. And now, I go to my third panelist, Amjum, who is from Kerala and from on the other side of the Palakkad Gap and down to Kerala. And so you, after studying in Kerala, decided to do your further studies in art in Mysore. So why did you decide to make Mysore your place and study art here?
First of all, thank you, Avid Learning. I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. Mm, yes, actually, I born and brought up in Kerala actually, but I have a deep connection with Mysore. I have spent some childhood vacation at Mysore. Why? Because it's one of the best tourist destination near from my hometown. So I have a connection some friends here. So it's helped me to choose the city for me for the academic studies. So 2017, I joined Kamarajan Academy of Visual Arts. At the time, it's entirely different for me in every manner. The cuisine, the celebration, their art practice, music, architecture, textile, and decorative oriented styles, and so on. As an artist, I'm fascinated for changing, seasons here. With all respect to Kerala, I never understand the changing seasons. And as an artist, I feel very fascinated about the Mysore season. And yeah, Chamundi Hill is one of the favorite place in Mysore for me personally. Why? Because the aesthetic of land of Mysore city, you can experience like 360-degree photograph. Um, and of course, there is a traditional Mysore painting. So for as an artist, it's enough for me to stay here and work. Akshay.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, I go back to Dr. Champa. Uh, Dr. Champa, I want to ask you, historically, Mysore has been known for its beautiful buildings. And from the 19th century, it has been one of the most well-planned cities in India when the fort was cleared out. And I mean, to imagine that the Mysore Palace was once surrounded with tiny gullies and small buildings. And after that, till 50s, 60s, and 70s, with all the layouts which were built, it was very well planned with a unique style of architecture of its own. So, how has this unique town planning of Mysore and its buildings, helped develop that Mysorean identity?
Mysore, with its urban setting, is the pride of each one of us. As I mentioned, it has a rich history. As you mentioned, the city core, I mean, right now we would like to call it a city core because that is where the original planning can be seen, which can be witnessed by all of us. It has an Indian layer, but it has been superimposed with Western influence during the 19th century, as you mentioned. The palace, which all of us know, the Mysore Palace, and its present with all its contextual setting in terms of the foreground of each building, the parks, the open spaces, even the treatment of road edges, the built heritage, these have become synonym to Mysore. You know, we cannot talk about or remember Mysuru without any of these characters. There has been a strong visual axis established between the landscape and monumental buildings, the streetscape with its achieved intended skyline. You know, these are all have been planned with intention. Harmonious buildings with their design approach of proportion, scale, elements, and setting. And this is not only limited to individual buildings, but then the same thing can be seen in public spaces which are interspersed with public building, friendly and comfortable, a very navigable pedestrian path. I still remember, I think most of the Mysoreans do prefer to walk by foot in the city center because there's very easily navigable and very comfortable too. And it has the right setting of landmarks, as you know, the statues, the clock towers, and even the treatment of the nodes, the junctions. Okay, they are like with all these kind of things, especially with all these are the main part of the palace and its present. Sort of, I think this is what has really helped Mysuru to gain the identity. And as we all know, the geographical location of Mysore, which is about 700 above MSL, and it has the upper basin of Kaveri, River Kaveri. I mean, it's the flat ground above it. So it gives the perfect setting for a town to come up. And they have strategically located. So that is the best part of it. And as all of us know, which Amba Vilas Palace, that's the palace, sort of is set in alignment with Chamundi Hill, establishing a strong axis, enhancing the cultural landscape. So these are very, very important, the way things have been planned by our ancestors, and we cannot delay the influence of the British Raj or too within this. And the religious importance of Chamundi Hill, as all of us know, it adds to the power of this particular juxtaposition. So, you know, when they were literally planning out this important building, apart from the main palace, there were a number of palaces which were built, and there were lakes which were created along the drain and things like that, the natural catchment area. So these, I could name few of the mansion, Jayalakshmi Mansion or Chelvamba or the Lalit Mahal Palace and things like that. Each one of them have been located on the higher ground within their immediate context and setting. And if we really look at the style of architecture, there's European classical, Greco-Roman pediment, which got added later on, Indo-Sasanic, these kind of style of buildings, they are adorning the streets and precincts of Mysore. So this is where we see, you know, this Western culture, the Britishers, they wanted a bit of back home being there wherever they had settled. So this kind of influence, we really see it in Mysore. I think I will stop at that and continue
Yes.
more with more information.
So I had I mean, you touched upon a very interesting topic, and I was talking to Vinay. Unfortunately, he's not there, and you touched upon one of my favorite buildings, which is a hidden gem of Mysore, and which not many people know. But I would like to tell the audience that if you are in Mysore next time, and if you are fond of palaces and princely architectural buildings, you must visit this building in the Mysore University campus known as Jai Lakshmi Mansion. It was restored by the Infosys Foundation, and it was built for Maharaja's sister and later donated to the Mysore University. But it is a beautiful palace, and I believe now it's a terracotta museum or a new handicraft museum which is run there,
Folklore.
folklore museum, and it's one of the loveliest buildings in Mysore city. Just one more quick question. A lot of these buildings which we see in Mysore, which have created a Mysorean identity, were built during the princely period. They were used for projection of state power and a purpose. Now, what is happening, as we were discussing before, is that if there is a shopping mall or if there is a five-star hotel, it is a mall in Mysore will be the same as a mall in Jaipur and a Lucknow and in Indore and in Bombay. So there is no distinct Mysorean flavor to that architecture. So in such a situation, for modern buildings, how do you see that changing with the evolution of with the coming of modern buildings in Mysore?
See, I would like to just mention, as I've mentioned, the style of buildings which were there. Earlier, it was European classical which came about, and then the Indo-Sasanic came, and then Greco-Roman got added into it, and then so it's not, maybe we just overall look at it as one, but there are series of changes, and vernacular architecture too has gotten into it. So everything has been Indianized. Okay, so it is a challenge, as you rightly mentioned, for the new modern buildings which are coming up and things like that. But at least in the palace precinct, there are a couple of guidelines which have been framed, and all the new buildings have to go by it. There is a big question mark because it's the elements which we are talking about. It could be the domes, or it could be the parapet, or any kind of those elements which we are talking in terms of adding on to this the new modern building. So there's always a debate which is going on at the level of Mysore. Even I think every forum has a big question mark with that. But some have been able to manage and then go rather match with the old, you could say it. Okay, they're going hand in hand.
Yes. There is just a comment from Calcutta Heritage Collective about, showing some images. So I would like to say, Dr. Champa, you have shared some lovely images, and I'm going to go to other panelists and come back, and we shall see some really lovely images showing the alignments which you have shown. And you can take us through and take our audience through, because they are really keen on seeing those lovely photographs. Anjum, while we connect with David, I would like to ask you. I mean, since we had this lovely chat yesterday on how the buildings of Mysore and the culture of Mysore has inspired your paintings and inspired your art, and you showed us visuals of these beautiful paintings and how you drew inspiration from the city. So I would like you to share it with the audience, because our audience would love to see your works and how you have drawn inspiration from Mysore city. So Anjum, can you please take us through?
These are the two works I displayed in Delhi. Actually, I worked in Mysore, these works. And this is my recent series named Interior Bloom. Actually, there is an art form called gesso work. It's a traditional way of making artwork using preparing, I mean, traditional way, using beads, prepared gum, cloth, natural paint, and gold leaf. So when I come to Mysore, it's so fascinating. My surrounding surroundings are full complete with very indigenous students. I'm an outside because they are telling good stories about their ancestors doing this process of gesso. So I have an idea taking that medium and convey more in a contemporary way. you know so it, these are this is a painting called Interior Bloom. It's an um, abandoned building. Actually, I draw a year back, and I add some my personal narration on it, and I try to make you know that gesso inspiration for my recent work. So this is the way I'm adapting the Mysore style or Mysoreans aesthetics of process that they're all over a process. So I think one more work is there. Yeah, as you know, this color come from the abandoned building. Brick color, dark, rough, red colors I use. So I'm recreating some architectural space. Uh, what I am seeing in Mysore. So I just add some personal narratives in that process. Akshay.
Yes, is interesting, interesting. But how have the Mysore as a city, the buildings, and what you have seen here? I mean, how has that inspired your art? Because Mysore, the Mysore school, which there was the Shastri and there were other painters. You go into the Jagan Mohan Art Gallery, and I would really ask our audience, if you're ever in Mysore, please don't uh, miss the Jagan Mohan Art Gallery. It's been beautifully restored. Some of the most exquisite artworks of the princely period, from Ravi Varma to great works of furniture, are there in the city. So that's another of my favorite spot, the Jagan Mohan Palace. So this legacy of art in Mysore and the buildings and the people. So how has it reflected in your art?
In my post graduation period, we go for a sketching. We have go to Jagan Mohan Paris, and great legacy is there. Raja River Mice commissioned different kinds of works in the time of Maharaja of Mysore. So this all are inspiring me, and Revama is very very clever to decorate the ornaments, and he's also tried gesso, and you know I mean I'm just explored only 2 years of pandemic has happened, that kind of things. So yeah, I want to talk more about um, my inspirations, but they are on the way. They are progressing. So I think that's
Yeah.
in future. I think.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Because you're carrying forward the artistic legacy of these great painters and sculptors, and this is what
Yeah.
perhaps India and Indian cities need. People associate Mysore, Bangalore, that whole circuit with techies and technology and all, but our cities would be dead. They would be just buildings of concrete without art, without architecture, without culture. So it's about creating these spaces. And I would like to ask David, as a heritage lover, I was so delighted to know the fact that one of the earliest things what you did in coming to Mysore is restoring a beautiful old bungalow near the palace and making it into a space. So how was that journey? I mean, why did you decide to do that? Because knowing India and all the paperwork and all the issues you face in India, that's one of the hardest things to do. So tell us about your journey there.
I mean, I think being a small business owner in India is probably more paperwork and harder than any kind of civil work. quite frankly, especially restoration. I mean, you're not jumping through the same hoops as you would with a brand new build. So that's from a practical perspective. And of course, I had cut my teeth in India running a small business, so I was kind of familiar with some of the the regulations and that kind of territory. But the bigger thing is, I do come from a family of builders. My grandfather and all of his brothers, my great grandfather, were all builders from the Med. And, a lot of the buildings that we see in Mysore were built around the same period as they were in Cape Town. As you also see in Bengal, in Calcutta specifically, and parts of the Orissa coast. So I've grown up with these beautiful 18th and 19th century buildings, 17th century in some cases, and it's definitely what drew me to Mysore. The sort of the neoclassical elements, the neo-baroque, etc. And at the same time, it pained me to see them being demolished and turned into malls, as you said, which are ubiquitous across the country. And they say nothing of the very specific history of the city and the role that it's played in global history. So I'm a person as an entrepreneur who's always scratched his own itch. And I do think that waiting for someone else to do something about it is not going to do much. Even if one can just, take one stance, fix one building, and let that inspire others. And what's been really great, the property that we've taken for Naviluna is my second restoration in the city. The first one being a 120-year-old toothpaste factory, in fact. And the amount of tradesmen and village folk and even working class Mysorians who've remarked on how they were uplifted to see a building like this being restored tells you that it's a virtue that is really held by a lot of the residents of the city. The problem, unfortunately, is that capital doesn't see it that way. And I think that's one of the things that we need to address. And I think that if we look at cities like Colombo, where they've been able to successfully restore precincts as well as individual buildings, and then draw revenue so that it's benefiting the area both culturally as well as economically. I think this is where the city of Mysore and Karnataka at large needs to be looking at.
So, David, everybody loves a good backstory. So I'm going to request Aisha to play the slides, and I want you to tell us the story of this building. How, were you just walking on the street and you decided, oh, I like that building, I want to restore that? I mean, what is the Mysore masala behind that whole story? So tell us the juicy good bits of your journey.
Absolutely, I'd be very happy to. So this building is called Raghava Sadhana. It was built in 1872, and it's where I'm sitting right now doing this conference call and this show today. It belonged to a joint family. It has remained in the original family. The family were in fact Raja Brahmins who served in the court in the Mysore palace. And it was a typical joint family home. Apparently, it was sort of the epicenter of the street. The great cricket player Srinath lived across the road and used to play cricket here in his youth, and he knew the family very well, still does. So it was very much a focal point. What's interesting though is the juxtaposition. The sort of mint-colored building next to it belonged to the land of the original property and was donated. But unfortunately, the school built a bit of a very large-scale extension to their original property on the land. Anyway, I digress. But I just come back from Sri Lanka. I sort of learned about the works of Geoffrey Bower and South Asian postmodern architecture, and was really sort of enjoying all of that, and really wanted to get my own teeth sunk into a project like this. So a mutual friend who's an artist from Mysore had put me in touch with the owner, and we had pitched a project in the building in 2016, which was approved in 2016, but only actually got to work in 2020. So it has been a long journey to get Raghava Sadhana back up and running. It's been vacant for 15 to 20 years. So a lot of civil work has gone on, and in fact, it's gone under two phases of restoration, both sort of structural and then cosmetic. So we're just finishing off the last bit now. And then Aisha can just show you the work that we've done, opening up that central window, restoring all the original Burmese teak pillars, restoring the Madras terrace roof. Intac have in fact been involved in this restoration. They've worked really closely, and the contractors that they work with specifically do these buildings across the country. So it's been a huge learning curve. I think it's one of the toughest things I've done in my career thus far. That's for sure. And especially these buildings, they need to be lived in. So having them been vacant for almost 2 decades, it's been a lot of sort of earth to move, but been very rewarding, I must say. And we've had a lot of comments of people walking up the street who were already afraid that we were going to knock it down, etc. And we've sort of reassured them that no, we're bringing it back, and it's going to be a public space for the people to come and experience Naviluna as a brand, as well as enjoy the contours of the building.
Fabulous, fabulous. But now I want to come to the second part of it, the sweet, gooey, chocolatey part of it. That from being a mixologist and or doing all different things, how did you end up doing chocolates in Mysore? And interestingly, Mysore and Karnataka have a very historic connection with coffee. It was one of the earliest places in India, the Baba Budangiri Hills, where coffee was cultivated in the early medieval period, and it's from here that it spread across India and the subcontinent. So what's the chocolatey story?
Great question, Akshay. So I am a mixologist or a cocktail bartender, a mixer of libations by profession, and I trained in London where I practiced for 11 years. I retrained as a bread baker, in fact, subsequently. A bit of a lifestyle audit, decided to give my liver a break, got into yoga and all the rest of it. So sort of more holistic path kind of led me out of the bars and into bread and baking. And I was looking to when I left the UK and I was visiting Mysore, I was visiting Morocco. I was looking for something to sort of continue to explore flavor and ingredients, but not necessarily drinks and wine, etc. And at that time, there was a movement that had started called the bean to bar chocolate movement, where small-scale chocolate makers were tinkering with homemade machines and looking to try and bring the flavor back into what would later be called craft chocolate. Now, India produces 0.3% of global cacao. The country is definitely not famous for cocoa the way it's famous for coffee, as you said, but the soil and the conditions which are conducive to coffee are as conducive for cocoa. So yeah, one thing led to another, and started experimenting. And of course, as a creative culinary person, one has so much to play with in terms of the fruits and the spices and all the things that one can use to season chocolate. So I think in many ways it was the ideal place to start an artisanal craft chocolate company.
Fabulous. So from artisanal chocolates, I want to go back to tradition. And Dr. Champa, I want to ask you now, since you are from the Arsu community, the Urs, which also formed the ruling elite of Mysore state, and were the original ruling class of Mysore, connected with the palace, and very traditional and all. So what is a traditional Mysorean cuisine, especially of your community, like? I mean, what would you have? I mean, our audience would love to know.
First thing, it's pronounced as Aras.
Aras.
Okay. To tell you, it's a small community, the Asu community, and the Odayas are the family who are ruling. Okay, so we are the extended family of it. So as you know, we are Kshatriyas and warriors. That means, so as part of that particular legacy, maybe eating non-veg and things like that is okay. But then as a community, we are strictly vegetarians. Okay. And that is what is followed even till today. And so it is, I can't really tell you, rice will be the main thing with all the vegetables of sambas and then the side dishes and things like that. There's a number of sweet dishes which we make at home, which are very local, and this is the thing. So I cannot say it is like belongs to the community alone. Rather, I would say the Mysoreans in general. Okay, so
So,
this is
so what would be like a traditional? I mean, we know the Mysore Pak and maybe the Mysore dosa or something like that. But are there any other dishes which are like eaten daily in Mysorean homes, very local to Mysore?
see now, if we go by the morning breakfast, okay, we do have our own akki roti, the so-called. That means the rice, the roti made of rice flour. Okay, that's one of the thing which other people do not use it so much. And we do have dosas, idlis, and poha, and then pongal and these kind of things. And there are couple of uh, what do you say, the semia, the house-made semia which I am talking about. So these becomes the part of the breakfast item. And lunch is quite lavish in terms of the rice being the main thing, but then we have so many varieties of sambars, and then other kind of things. Okay, and lots of side dishes made out of many varieties of vegetables. So sweet dishes, if I really come to saying puran poli, what you all call it as, obbattu is what we call it as, and kajaya is one of the it's again made out of rice flour and jaggery. That's one of the favorite. And then we do have something called halwa, I mean, in your name. So those are couple of things which are part of our local cuisine, you can say it. And then being Mysoreans and from the agriculture background again, the Myso, we do have the ragi mudde, what we call it as. The ragi balls, what we use it, and people do relish it. And I think the ones who eat non-veg, they eat it with chicken, curry, and things like that. But the we vegetarians have so many more varieties using all the locally grown crops to make dishes out of. Okay, those are like the perfect combination, you could say.
So this is, home tradition, traditional food, what you make at home. Now, if you were to go out and have some street food or go out in the evening, is there your personal favorite? Is there something you'd like to go out and eat on an evening?
I think pani puri, masal puri would be the best. Okay, we can't say no to it. And we do have the churumuris and belpuris and things like that. It's become part and parcel of, I think, every city, every town, and things like that. Yes, I think these days lots of, I mean, the area where I stay in Vivi Mohalla, at least the ones who will know, there are about 100 plus restaurants just in walkable distance. Okay, rather you could say next to each other. The entire area has come up like that, the neighborhood. So I think people really relish on different kinds of cuisine which are offered by these places, from small food joints to the roadside to the fine dines. Okay, so all things are there. And there is a food street, the Chaat Street in the city, I think, where David's place is quite close to that. That's another hotspot for the Mysoreans to go and try out different kind of dishes and things like that. And we do have these small the food joints where they make this authentic, because these days the things are not made at home by many people, so you do get to taste all kinds of food. So there are n number of such small joints which have not been listed out, you could say that.
So it is interesting how food and the changes, evolving taste of food defines a culture of a city and plays an important role. So, David, I would like to ask you. I mean, in fact, there is a question from the audience that what is Raghav Sadhana, and is it open to public? I mean, can people come in? And the second question, I mean, second part of my question was that. Coming to the topic of food, now with artisanal chocolates and all, I mean, generally our perception, I mean, non-Mysoreans from outside, is that Mysore is a very traditional city. So how has been the response to these things?
Sure. So first of all, what is Raghava Sadhana? That is the official name of the property that we've been working on, which will become the new Naviluna headquarters, as well as our new production center. We'll be opening a bakery and a brasserie and retailing. It's not open to the public just yet. We are almost finished with restoration and setting the place up commercially. So another couple of months, I hope. But I'm pretty confident we're almost there. So it will be open to the public very soon, and it will be the new premises for Naviluna. First point. In terms of the response, yes, Mysore is definitely considered sort of quite conservative and traditional in terms of its tastes, as well as its offering, which is quite surprising considering just how diverse the city is. You have remnants of the Afghan community brought in by Tipu Sultan. You have Ottoman influences. You have indigenous Dakhini influences, the artist family, and your sort of rural Karnataka, Gauda communities, etc., as well as international influences from various parts of Europe, and also the Arabian trading routes on on the Malabar coast. Now, it took definitely some time for, I would say, Mysorians to pick up on what Naviluna has been doing. We have a sort of very contemporary approach to our flavors. We always work with local and indigenous ingredients from the length and breadth of India, but with an India-only sourcing policy. But the way that we combine flavors and put them together has been very contemporary. And naturally, as one would expect, our initial traction was from places like Bombay and Bangalore, Calcutta, Goa, for example. But it's been we started in 2000. Well, we launched the market in 2014, so it's been 7 years now that we've been on the market, and we've really seen an uptake in customers and fans and people really enjoying what we do come from Mysore city. So it's really great to see that, folks from Mysore are becoming a lot more sort of experimental and brave and adventurous with their tastes. And Naviluna is definitely a part of that.
So, David, there is a question for you from Calcutta Heritage Collective. That what was the most challenging aspect of the restoration to adapt to? What was the most difficult part of the restoration process?
Technically speaking, one of the challenges I set myself up with was to go to a hybrid of working with specialist masons, doing lime plaster and lime masonry, but also teaching local masons, because I realized that getting specialists from Jharkhand and Rajasthan would not be sustainable in terms of the maintenance and the long-term future of the building. Buildings like this are quite sensitive, especially if they're going to be used for commercial uses. So annual, if not biannual, maintenance is really important. So we've been working with a company called M Lime, based in Rajasthan, that does pre-slaked lime that can then be mixed with locally found aggregates and taught to local masons. So that's something that we've been doing. And a lot of, including Intac and a lot of other people who do a lot of this kind of work, said to us it's not really possible to take a sort of modern cement mason, but we've been successful. I must say, I'm really happy to say that. And I think I've been encouraging the masons that we work with to specialize in this kind of work. They can carve a niche, So that's been one of the challenges. The second biggest challenge has definitely been readapting a building that was built to be a home into a commercial space, especially one with kitchens and a sort of chocolate factory, etc. So yeah, adapting a residential building to commercial is definitely tough. We've got very small rooms, very small doorways, etc. So those sorts of things. Yeah.
So Anjum, I would like to ask you about. You were telling me about a group of friends, group of fellow artists, and you're coming together and trying to see, if you can make an art moment, collaborate, do an art moment in Mysore. So if you can just tell us something about that.
Yeah, actually, we are seven artist friends. We all are studied in same school, Kawa, but not in the same time actually. Um, there is no intention for making that kind of group. Actually, it's very spontaneously come from that school actually. There are a lot of specialists like embroidery expert is there, cinematographer is there, editor, sculptor, printmaker, and the naturalist is also including our group. So I already mentioned we are in the beginning stage, but we have a plan. Because there are so many indigenous toy making families are here in Mysore. So we are planning to make a documentary and exhibit on a public. Because they are they are very you can they can upfront their cult. So we are planning like that kind of a documentary because we have a choice like that. So yeah, maybe in future.
So there is one more question from one of the our audience members. That is, are there now any contemporary art installations in Mysore city for public, in public spaces or public viewing? I mean, has the government or the city administration put any contemporary art installations around Mysore city?
Oh, actually, yeah, I want to talk about the youth.
Mhm.
Young,
Yeah.
young people, young artists engage in many ways through the art in Mysore. Here we have small scale galleries in um, Mysore city. Very few are exhibiting there. There is no contemporary art gallery in Mysore actually, to be honest. So actually, we have a plan to make large scale show, and the discussion is going on. There is no public art installation right now in Mysore. So
Okay. So I'd like to come to Dr.
Akshay, sorry, I would just like to add to that particular information. Uh, Maybe as public art, it's not there, but it's done in different ways. Recently, the Kawa building where Anjum studied, that particular, because of the road widening, the wall was shifted towards the inside of the property. That entire wall is being done up by the same students, set of students with interesting pictures, images, and things like that. I saw them happening, so it's a festive mood. The ones who are moving through, and then our heritage railway station, they do have these tunnels, okay, the pedestrian paths, which has been provided with these kind of artwork which sort of portray the Mysore culture. And we do have at one of the junctions, every year we do have this art fest wherein all the artists come and display, and they are engaged in face paintings, and those kind of things are happening at one of the important junctions. So these are
and
couple of things which have started happening, but it's happening at bits and pieces, you could say that.
yeah, in
Yes.
in Dasara time we have a large scale show is exhibiting our college students. So it's so important show actually yearly happening in Mysore.
Oh, interesting. So, Dr. Champa, there are a couple of questions for you. One, interestingly, I mean, since you are an architect into urban planning, there is an interesting question from Srihita who asks, I mean, who's working on a thesis for a Karnataka cultural center, and she asks, what would be the best location in the Mysore city, which would be suitable for a Kannada cultural center where the local community as well as the visitors can come and experience Kannada culture. Do you think there is a specific locality in Mysore which reflects this?
I think the culture flows in the entire Mysore. But if she is very specific in terms of taking up a site to do her academic project or something like that, I think the town hall area right in front of the palace would be the best. There is a town hall which is not really being used, but it has its own importance as part of Mysore. And it has large area. So it is like, how much can you really build and how much you cannot build is will be a biggest challenge. I think that's where she should look into, but not build too much and destroy, but rather merge with the surrounding, the heritage and things like that. I think that will be the great space. And even if not, because it's too much of challenge, The immediate surrounding of the city core do pose a lot of challenge and opportunities. So she could choose any one of such pockets and then come up with this thing, and Mysore would love that. And I would like to say there are a couple of museum you did mention, one of the museum, but there are a couple of other museum. It is like, Indira Gandhi Sangrahalaya is there, where the art and craft is being encouraged. So like that, couple of places are there. I think that also should be ventured into. Okay.
There is another question from Urmila for you, that what was the contribution of Gustav Krumbel, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Krumbigel, to the planning of Mysore city, and what has endured from it?
I think the Herman, yeah, Gustav. See, though he was a German by this thing, he was sort of encouraged and made to join the Mysore regent, you can say, as a uh, helping person. And basically, he's a botanist. And so the Lalbagh, the famous Lalbagh, is his contribution to us. So he did establish the horticultural society and things like that, and our own Brundavan gardens of Krishna Jasagar. He was part of that designing. So the Mughal garden came into Mysore and things like that. So those are the main contribution of his, which we will all remember, Mysoreans and Bangaloreans. So basically all these things, the horticulture, the importance of open landscape, the parks and things like that was sort of brought in by him.
Interesting. So next question I would like to take to David. Now we are living in the new normal, a new normal which never seems normal, and that is COVID and phase 1, phase 2, and now this Omicron. So there is a question that how has COVID impacted the cultural events, the restorations, or other, even cuisine? I mean, going out, dining in restaurants, and on. So what has been the impact of COVID on the uh, whatever the plans, cultural plans of Mysore, I mean, including yours?
Absolutely. Oh, it's been very difficult. I think the impact in Mysore overall has been mitigated in comparison to larger metros. However, the recovery has also been mitigated. Mysore does get over 5,000 tourists per annum, and that is definitely a large part of the economy, and its absence has been felt over the last 2 years. There have been a lot of notable hotels, as well as smaller businesses, which either have only just reopened or haven't reopened at all. In terms of us, it's been very difficult as well, because with a heritage restoration project, especially pre-monsoon, if one doesn't complete certain things, natural growth, foliage, etc., can come back with a vengeance, and a lot of the work that you do can get undone, especially during the monsoon season, which is exactly when this lockdown happened. So it definitely set our project back 6 months. And then, of course, costs go up. There's lockdown related inflation. So it's been very challenging, I've got to say. And of course, we don't have the tourism that the city usually enjoys. So, our small business has also been impacted. In terms of culinary, of course, we've seen a great increase in online orders, both in Mysore and across the country. Lockdown is very, very difficult, and it also does hamper investor confidence. So when someone is trying to really invest in Mysore and bring capital to Mysore, it has slowed down that process, unfortunately. So yeah, no, lockdown has been really hard on us for sure.
Anjum, I would like to ask you, I mean, there's a question from audience member that, like Kochi Binale, and there's a lot of art, and that has made Kochi into a center of contemporary art and all. So is there a potential for something to take place in Mysore, like a Mysore Binale? I mean, what do you think of the potential for that?
And I'm an eyewitness. I'm a part of a first Kochi Mysuru Binale volunteer. So I know, you know, now my grandmother is taking shots and send to me some kind of Binale news, some kind of art news. It's changed. It's humongous change has happened after the Binale for Kochi. From here, Mysore, there are a lot of public spaces and heritage buildings are there. So we can try for that, because that kind of spaces are available here at Mysore. So this all are in our discussion actually. So yeah.
Great. So now I'd like to come to Dr. Champa because, as they say, we always save the best for the last, and everybody's waiting to see the lovely visuals. I mean, Mysore is nothing without its beautiful buildings, palaces, boulevards, and avenues. So it would be great if you can take us through some of the lovely buildings and the fabulous town planning that defines Mysore as a city.
As I said, every Mysorean wakes up to the circle, the nodes, which are adorned with these statues, the lovely mantapas, the kiosks, and each of these statues have a great role in making of Mysore. Okay, so maybe the slides could just go on. I mean, I will. Yeah, if I just really talk in terms of this, so this, if you just really see the green patch on the left hand side is one of the lake, okay, and the yellow lines are emerging from Chamundi Hill. As all of us know, it has a religious impact, and it sort of overpowers the entire Mysore, and we are all proud of it. And strategically, when the palace were placed, they're all at the higher position, overlooking onto the hill. And I do not know, even when we are standing next to the Crawford Hall, the University of Mysore administrative building, I can still see the Lalit Mahal, which is about 7 kilometers away. So that means each one of them have been on an axial path and then visually connected. Okay, so this is how this kind of the planning which were done has been looked into. And every building and the core is interspersed with the green spaces so that one can enjoy each one of these buildings. The next, please. If we really look at the center one is the palace, Ambavila's palace, what we call it is, and we can see the race course on the lower right hand side. Yes, and the hill is beyond that. So the red tinge, what we see is the city core, where we actually see the character or the image, what we all are proud of. And the next circle, if you go the little lighter, those are the mohallas, what we should be knowing about the residential extension, and then the further extended residential areas. What we are all proud of, Saraswatipuram or KR-puram or Jayalakshmipuram, Yadavgiri, and things like that. And things beyond that is the newer development which is happening, though they are trying to take that forward, but it has not been so successful. But still, since, see, the one, the vision of the designers is, though it is to talk about the power of the city through these avenues and the buildings and things like that, but it's not like Delhi or something like that. It's not overpowering. I think that's what we all need to realize. The very human scale and very approachable, very understandable kind of a thing. As I said, very easily navigatable city. That is what they had envisioned and then did it also. Next, please. Yeah, this is the main palace, the old one and the new one which got constructed. Just to tell you, I think some of you are from outside Mysore. The fort area was where the people lived in, along with the palace mansion. But due to plague and there was a fire because it was a wooden palace after that, so they took that as the reason, and the population had started growing, so they took that as an opportunity. So they built a new palace, but they cleared all the people who were staying within the fort, and they made them stay in these mohallas, which were surrounding the village and things like that. If we really go by the Mysore, this thing, depending on where the agriculture crops were coming, so the market was set out. From the Kolar, the gold and things like that would come up. So that is where the trading from Bangalore and all, that's where the trading started happening. So each of these lanes or the roads have an importance, even in terms of the growth, the way the things were planned and things like that. So that is how the mohallas comes into the picture. So there's Mandi Mohalla, there's Enna Mohalla, like that. So there's so many mohallas just surrounding the palace area. Next, please. Yeah, I mean, we cannot leave talking about Mysore without mentioning Dasara, because though it is just a 10 days celebration, which we call it as Nada Habba, but the entire city, or at least some part of the city, has been designed to take in this particular procession. So even it could be the Sayaji Rao Road, or it could be the Bamboo Bazaar and things like that. It sort of comes to life with the procession happening. And if you really see the elephants, if we go 1 month in advance of the actual Dasara happening, we see those elephants taking the walk. That means they're practicing that particular stretch. So even that's a festive mode. Lot of us have gone there just to see the elephants walk that, not only the last, the procession which we talk about. Yeah. Next. Yeah, these are a couple of public squares. This is one formal public space, which is right in front of Devaraja Market, which we have, and it has a small clock tower too, duffel clock tower. And it is a happening place. Though this picture has no activities as such, but then, it's one of the, and I'm happy that, I was also part of couple of design inputs into this particular thing when the corporation took it up as a project. So there are other public spaces, maybe the Balarama Gate, one of the gate in front of the palace and things like that, though not formally done, but then it's a happening place. So like that, many places are there. So what you were talking about, the art binale kind of thing, I think we'll leave with it, the Mysore. There is something or the other happening. The 10 days of Dasara itself talks so much about it. There's art happening. There's, performances happening across the city. So the whole city is lit up and it's festive mood. Next, please. These are a couple of street of Mysore, the axial planning, what we look at. And with the trees, the nature and things like that, the gateways, which sort of divide the areas into two halves and things like that. It's like lovely landscape. Next, please. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. This is one of the entrance, the north gate of Mysore Palace. So this is a happening place. The procession starts from here. It goes out from here. And you do have, any marathon, any social cause, any kind of, I've seen even Hayabusas, those bike tracks and color. This becomes the congregational point for all kinds of activities. So like, this is what I meant, though it is not formally designed as a public space, but it acts as one. So like that, we have so many more in Mysore. Next, please. Yeah, the lakes, I can't just forget. We have Kukulali Lake, Karanji Lake, and then Lingambudi, just to name few and things like that. The Kukulali Lake is adjoining the Mysore University. And if I remember my childhood, we used to go for walks. We had our grandfathers or their friends who were writers, authors. I think the Mysore University has given maximum number of these literary output into the world. We have so many Jnanapita awardees coming out of my University of Mysore. And Kukulali, this is the left hand, the top one, which has the pavilion. That has been the inspiration to all these awardees. So I'm happy that I was part of Mysore University too. Next, please. Yeah, this is one of the old pictures looking at the Chamundi Hill at the background. It's seen from the palace. Yeah, these are the, next please. Yeah, these are the couple of junctions. We have the big clock tower and then these Hardin Circle and things like that, the fountain, yeah, which was earlier within the city. Now it has been moved towards the jail and all the other public buildings which we really see it, religious and other institutional building. Next, please. Yeah, I mean, even if we just take the left-hand side, the top one is CFTRI. Even that's one of the very nice building which you should visit, Akshay, next time. You were talking about Jayalakshmi Villas. So we have the DC office on the right-hand side down and Rajendra Villas Palace, which is on top of the hill. Sadly, it's not really being operated, but then it used to be one of the hotspots. The hotel was being run. So one of the streets where all the public buildings, institutional buildings have the character, and then, they really make Mysore what it is. Next, please. Lots of palaces, Summer Palace or British Palace, and the Jayalakshmi Villas Mansion, what we mentioned within the university. Next, please. Yeah, these are the religious building, the church and the temples, which are all over the palace complex itself. Within the fort, there are so many temples, even today functioning. Next, please. Yeah, these are a couple of institutional building because the Mysore Maharajas gave equal importance and they donated hundreds of acres to all these institutions. Mysore University, they did. And right now we have Music University too. And they are the ones who actually initiated Tata Institute also in Bangalore. They call Jamshedji, and then I think Maharaja donated about 400 acres of land for them to start something like that. So they were really into art, architecture, literature, education, and things like that. Next, please. Yeah, these are certain few of the houses in Mysore, talking about all about character, be it locally, some are vernacular, and some are with the monkey top, which is very famous in Mysore and Bangalore. And these are the residences which we do have till to date. Next, please. Yeah, these are a couple of administrative buildings and then Oriental Research Library, which has all these palm leaf where, the scripts are there and things like that. They still have maintained it. And the below the photo is the mounted police. I mean, we are really proud. Even till today, when we go to the city, especially during Dasra and all these poses are, polices are there on the horses. And it's really nice for us to look at it. We just go there to have a glimpse of it. And that's where they are all trained and then kept under. And I need to inform that they do have a small museum within the mounted police building, which has very nice musical instruments, and it is open to public. I think one should go and see it. And we do train the IAS officers, and I happened to go for one of the sessions to talk about art and architecture and planning to one of those. So it's a feel-good factor that happens in Mysore. And I cannot forget talking about the police band, because earlier, all these neighborhood parks used to have this police band happening on Sunday evening. And as kids, And as neighborhood, I think all of us would gather there just to listen to those things. I think that's the memory we have. And today also, they do play in the palace and other certain occasions and things like that. We did, through the heritage committee, when we went to inspect the building for some kind of renovation and things like that, they played it for us, and it's really amazing. So these are all the experiences which we associate with Mysore. Next, please. Yeah, these are the streets of Mysore, the commercial areas, the Lansdowne building and other areas, though Lansdowne building unfortunately have not been restored. There's still certain controversies going on whether to restore or to rebuild. So it's closed down, but then it's part and parcel of Mysore, right in the heart of the city. Next, please. Yeah, this is just the glimpses of other thing. The police band, what I mentioned, the Devaraja market has, even today, believe it or not, many Mysoreans go to Devaraja market to do their shopping of vegetables and other things, pansari, what we call it, the puja items and things like that, and the betel leaf, we cannot forget it. Somebody did mention about it, Villedale, what we call it. The Mysore is famous for all these kind of things. So it is lovely experience going into the market, especially during the festival, to buy all those flowers and all those things. Next, please. Yeah, this is one of the main circle of the node, Chamaraja circle in front of the palace. Next, please. Yeah, so this all of you know about it. Yes, the fully lit palace, and it goes up at one time and comes down. That doesn't mean there's only one control. There are two controls or something like that. It's like timed out, and there are manually it's switched on and switched off. So the timing is perfect between them. That is how it happens. Not many of them will be aware of it. Yeah. Thank you, Akshay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Champa, for that visual treat. And I would like to tell our audience that the whole purpose of having this cultural capital series is to, for us to start thinking. Cultural capital doesn't have to be sarkari, it doesn't have to be under government patronage. It is us, the residents of these places, enthusiasts of these places, people seeking new experiences. I mean, David is from across the seas. Amjum is from across the Palakkad Gap from Kerala. People from across India coming together and making a city a lovely, vibrant place. And with that, thank you so much. You've been such a lovely, patient audience. And I'd like to hand now to Asad.
Champa, David, Amjum, Akshay. Sorry, I think my internet's a little spotty, but Dr. Champa, that visual journey of Mysore was so spectacular. It actually was like almost like deja vu for me, because I actually went to Mysore when I was in school. That was many decades back. And suddenly I remembered that the handicrafts of Mysore, I remember buying my sandalwood soap. This just came to me while I was watching this for some strange reason. That was in the form of paper. I don't know whether I'm remembering things from somewhere else, but that's what I remember. But I think I need to make another trip and put Mysore on all our next travel maps. But thank you for being such a great panelist. We missed Vinay, and wish him all the best in his emergency. Akshay, you're a pro as usual. Thank you for so skillfully moderating this session. And to Live History India, we've been doing, this is the eighth edition of the series, and we have many more to come. So Akshay, you can run, but you can never hide. Remember that. And most of all, to our audiences who've been so patient and with us through this whole series, and actually stayed with it, and that makes it even more fun for us to do this. And to Monica and Menka from Artcentrics and Flint for actually helping us during this session. We have many more interesting programs to come. Avid Online doesn't sleep technically. Our next edition is on next Thursday. It is part of our Now series, and it's on the road to eco transportation. So do stay in touch. Follow us at Avid Learning or check out our website. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and remember that learning never stops. Thank you very much once again, and have a wonderful
Okay.
evening.
I would just like to add something. Thank you, Avid, for inviting us for this particular panel discussion. It was lovely. We learned too. And to tell you, I associate myself as dean at Mysore School of Architecture. The minute I said I'm going to be talking, so many faculty came forward and gave me quite a few points you should be talking about, though I couldn't touch upon all the points. Thanks to all of them. And then the Mysore Literature Festival is being done by Shubha Sanjayaras, curated by her, and
Of
we are
course.
getting so many authors into Mysore. So that's another feast that we are enjoying. So the Binale, what other audience were asking, we are having a Binale every day. Okay, that's what I wanted to mention. And then the photojournalist who gave me, Sridhar, who gave me the photos, thanks to him also. Thanks to Akshay for the lovely questions, appropriate question. And David, nice to have met you, and Anjum too. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. Good night.